So, Louise, can I get a clarification? The 168,730 cost allocation.
Right. That is.
That's the contribution to the future.
No.
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 What is that?
The $168,000 is for the town's general government cost in supporting the building department, from the city manager office to finance to IT to building maintenance.
Okay.
Okay.
But don't we also have a contribution to the construction of a future building?
Right. If you go to the budget and if you would go to page 21, we are transferring 153,356. This is based on the study with MBS to capitalize the building department portion of the new building using a 5% interest rate as debt service. Even though we cannot issue debt, but this is anticipation of future need and amortizing that building cost at 5% over 20 years amortization, and the annual payment is $153,000.
Where does that money go?
So that $153,000 then goes into a fund,
A construction fund.
a construction fund
Right.
for future.
Building department portion of the new building. And currently with this $153,000 up to fiscal year 2011, the building department would have contributed over $2 million.
So there's $2 million sitting in a fund to someday replace the trailers that the building department is currently in.
Where is that?
So part of what happens is we're saying there's a $500,000 shortfall, but $153,000 of that is money that we're setting aside to someday build a building.
And what I would like to point out is based on the 2010 operating result, including this $153,000, building department was an operating loss about $350,000. They will still have a loss in 2011 because we know for sure the income is not going to be enough to cover the expenditure. In 2012, if we, like the city manager mentioned, if we continue with the model that we have today, they will continue to have a loss, even though building activity are picking up. But building value, not for Atherton, but for overall the Bay Area, is dropping over 30%. Even my own house, I looked at it, yesterday. And it did show that reduction. But I think what we need to be, and I mentioned the city manager, we need to address is we cannot continue to let that become a one at a loss. Because we need to maintain, even if it's not $1 million future liability, we need to at least not drop below $500,000. And we need to, so 2012 is a year that we must address building department's expenditure and revenue.
Right. I think that we need to. We intentionally underfunded the building department last year to bring down those reserves, but with an awareness that we couldn't continue to underfund it at that rate, or we would do what this shows. And so, based on the experience there, or the actual activity level through this point, we're going to have to look at raising those permit fees or cutting the costs in the building department. We can't have the building department costing this much and for this activity level.
And when do we have to do that? At the beginning of next year?
We have to do that beginning of next fiscal year.
Right, July.
Right, yeah, right away.
Right. And actually, even though it go into operation on July 1st, but this has to be addressed with the adoption of this budget for
Right.
next fiscal year. So we should already have a plan. in place so that when we're going into July 1st, we know that we're going to have a balanced budget.
Right. So this is based on the recommendations that come from you guys and analyzing the department and what we can do in the department to make it more efficient.
And time is of the essence.
Yes.
On all of this, and that's why I say I regret having to submit a budget that doesn't have very much basis in fact, but it does, I think, show up that we're going to have a different business model. And it's going to have to be more or less across the board. And I think we've got to get away from this up and down yo-yo effect that we have of being super funded at one point and then terribly upside down, but somehow getting to a point where we can run a business model with some predictability and some adaptability to when the market turns down, we can adapt to that. When the market heats back up, we can adapt to that. And I don't think that's built in right now.
I think it also needs to be, we need to be able to maintain for the residents a rather constant level of service so that we're not, in responding to those cycles, having a dramatic impact on the service that we offer the residents as we go through these changes. And so it's having a sustainable model that
And one way, of course,
people can
to
count on.
balance those ups and downs is to increase the reserves.
Increase what?
Increase the reserves. I mean, that's in a business, that's the way you do it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of cycle, you smooth it out by using your reserves or putting money into the reserves. And hopefully, we're not in a position to do that.
No. And in addition to having reserves to fall back on so there's not knee-jerk panic reactions, but also the ability to lower costs where necessary, which we're so fixed right now that it's very difficult to do that.
And I would say, I'm sure most of you know, that all of our employee contracts, except the police department, are up in June. So very soon, we'll be starting to negotiate new employee contracts. And clearly, that's going to be a tough negotiation with the unions. But I'm sure that there is some recognition by our employees that the country is a very difficult financial environment.
I think we have benefited, if you will, from the fact that we are not alone in this, that every day in the newspaper is an article about some other municipality facing this issue and getting some kind of cooperation and some givebacks from their unions, because none of us can sustain the
There's
levels
been
we
some
have.
good examples recently in San Jose, the firemen, the police there just all took a 10% salary cut. So there have been some good examples, and hopefully we will have some of that.
And I think
happiness.
I would just like to say that I think your forceful position on this, Mayor, has set a good tone to begin this. So I appreciate that.
I just wanted to tell you.
Stake in the ground.
Be a pushover, whatever we do.
I'm confident of that, so I applaud you for that, because I think that clearly we have to address this on all fronts.
Yeah.
Well, and failure, if I might add, failure to address it early, not so early on, but now, you run into the Costa Mesa Model, where they just let 50% of the town go. Just flat out let 50% of the town go. And I think that's disruptive to morale, it makes forecasting difficult. And I think whoever it was that said city services, our goal is to maintain city services, not to every time there's a bit of a financial hiccup, that we run backwards and reduce services. Sustainable model.
And you've seen some of these things happen in Oakland, for instance, where they laid off, I think, 160 of the police officers, at least based on what you read, because the union would not take any reduction in the salaries, which I find that if you're all part of a team, which I would hope that they are, that you wouldn't do it that way. But anyway, I think these are the things that there have been examples where I think police services in Oakland clearly have been reduced, and I don't think we want to get into that.
John, I recommend you try and listen to the podcast of a radio show yesterday on KCBS where they interviewed the police department for an hour. And they went into all the detail you could ever want to know.
This is in Oakland?
No, I think it was San Francisco.
Yeah.
It may have been Oakland, because I just heard a couple minutes I was going to church, but it was on the, they have a program from 9:30 to 10, or 9 to 10, I don't remember which. I just got a couple minutes of it. But they were going into a lot of detail, and I thought it'd be good if you wanted to go through what they're doing. And they had a plan A and a plan B and a plan C to based on revenues, you know, whatever they materialized or didn't materialize. So I thought it was a very rational discussion, a brief point that I listened to. And the other point is, I think on this building department, it seems to me you have to have something by next month if you're going to get to the board in June to approve it. It's got to be decided by the first week in May. I mean, your recommendation, and then if the finance committee would look at it, and then the board could deal with it in June, it would go into effect in July, whatever it was, if you can.
I'm hoping that by the next finance committee meeting, that we will have some hard stuff here. And of course, a budget is a budget, which is a longer range outlook. And I always, in the business world, have a budget and a short-term forecast. And the two of them, of course, you know, the short-term forecast can change depending on circumstances, but you still need a budget, which is your best view of what's going to happen.
Well, you got the union negotiations, so I don't know how you get the chicken or the egg.
Well, we have to make some assumptions, and for our budget, we'll make some assumptions, clearly for employee costs, but they will not be in any detail because that would not be good from negotiating.
All right.
Well, I don't know that there's any point at the moment in discussing the updated 5-year financial forecast. I feel that until we can get the 1-year financial forecast in place, with clearly some changes, major changes, that the 5-year financial forecast is kind of meaningless.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm not so sure of that. I mean, we were locked into some outlays in the future, so maybe we straighten all that out in this coming year's budget. But we have, you know, the forecast shows. By the way, Louise, I think you've done a wonderful job, and this is no way of criticism of your forecast. It's an appreciation of your forecast because it gives us a basis for discussion. Okay, the forecast shows 5% per annum growth in active medical expenses. We'll be lucky if it's more likely to be like 8%. So
You like it, what, Al?
more likely to be something like 8%. Current trends.
Alan, actually, I used 10%.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and the reason is only 5 because the other 5 already have an increase from 5 years. So. Because the 10% increase in from post-medical is on a calendar year, or we are on a fiscal year. So, but the assumption that built into the model, even in the budget, is always a 10% increase in the medical costs.
But also employee contributions to pension funds and to medical benefits, I'm certain is one of the things that's going to be discussed.
It has to be discussed, right? Because I think we need to agree on a defined contribution model where the contributions by the town don't exceed the growth in our revenues.
As I say,
Yeah, okay,
at least in my agenda,
yeah,
these are very important items
right,
for discussion when we get into
okay.
the union discussions. I think that, you know, at the present time, I've seen other towns
Mhm.
make major changes to those. I've seen changes where towns
Yeah,
are
I just,
saying the employee contributions can be 50%
sure,
in both cases.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're going to end up, but
yeah, I
they
just
make a
wanted,
major difference to us.
yeah, I just want to draw attention to the fact that in these out years, we've got commitments that are going to have to be modified. It's not just this coming year, but
No,
it's,
Well, we're gonna discuss that next, aren't we?
yeah.
well, the mayor was thinking we could just pass
Well, if you
over.
want to look at the 5-year financial forecast, it's all right as far as I'm concerned, except I really don't think it's meaningful at the moment.
Well, some of these questions, I mean, I have a question on these pension projections. Where are you getting those 40%? 14